Hello, my friends. Hello, my life warriors, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Day In, Day Out podcast. Woo! Today on the podcast, I'm very lucky to have Jerry Zehr. Rhymes with there and here. Yes, he is an author, speaker, teacher, and minister. How are you today, sir?
Oh, I'm wonderful. Thank you for inviting me to be on your show, and I'm looking forward to our conversation and with your listeners.
Look, sir, look. Like before we started this podcast, Jerry here was just a tsunami of information coming at me big time. I had to pause him, stop it, and yes, bring him back to zero. But yeah, if you can go into a little bit of detail of what your book is about, because it's not your first book, it's your second, if I'm correct.
Yes. It's been a labor of love over the last 2 years. And I think as we talked before the podcast, what really motivated me was I've been working in interfaith ministries and trying to build peacemaking and relationships over the last 35 years. And I believe we have so much more in common than what divides us. But in reality, most of us maybe have never met somebody who's Muslim or Sikh or Baha'i or Jewish or Christian. It all depends on what our background. And so I wrote this book, The Peacemaker's Path, Multifaith Reflections to Deepen Your Spirituality. It's taking 6 themes that are in all of our faith traditions. And then I've taken those themes and I've kind of written reflections for them. So it's really a 40-day devotional. You can read each day, one day, 15 minutes a day, or you can read a whole chapter as you go. But the idea is each day has a reflection, and then you have scriptures from all of the major religions, and then you have some thoughts to reflect on, some questions to reflect on, and a closing prayer from a faith leader. My hope is that people will start to, read the scriptures from the Quran or the Baha'i, or scriptures from the Baha'i, the Sikh scriptures that, most of us have never read, the Hindu teachings or Buddhist teachings. But when you read this in the book, I think it will help you to go, wow, there is some really rich wisdom that can enhance my own life.
Right. So I should have said scholar as well in my intro. But yeah, with regards to this, how long did it sort of take you to sort of pull different scriptures from all of these religions? Because it's, let's just say, if you take a look at Christianity, it's quite in depth. Quran, very in depth. Buddhist, very in depth. Yeah, how long did it take you to pull all of this in-depth information and find interconnected pieces from each religion?
Well, it probably took me a year of just doing that research and writing. Um, Part of it was I did not want to write a book of theology. Nobody would read that. I wanted to write something very practical, something that, has a reflection that some of my experience or maybe experiences of others that I've met or heard from. And then with the scriptures, it's like the principle of karma. We hear the word karma a lot. In Christianity, Jesus says, you reap what you sow.
Yeah.
And I love that image. What you put out there, Jesus says, you will come back. If you put out there love and goodness and blessings and richness, it will come back to you. If you put out anger and bitterness and greed, you'll just have it all come back in drama. Well, that same principle, as a Christian, I was a Christian, I then realized, well, that scripture's in the Hindu scriptures, which were written way before Jesus' time, the Buddhist scriptures, and then that's theme, and it's very similar. The words aren't exactly alike, but it's amazing how I believe that truth is brought forth in these great teachers over different cultures and ages. And when you see these principles that are almost universal principles, you almost have to go, wow. I mean, where does that come from? It isn't just made up in somebody's mind. When you have that type of universal insight, it makes me say, there's something beyond us, that maybe a consciousness, you can call it God, you can call it higher power, ultimate consciousness, but there's something of the universal wisdom for us to tap into.
Yeah, like it's the thing. Yeah, with karma and like the way you put it there, like I often say consistency is like one of the most powerful things in this universe. And like, hey, when you go, yes, put out bad karma, it comes back to you. It's like, yeah, you put out like you consistently do bad things. Yes, you will get a consistent feedback loop of bad things. You might randomly get something good happen, but generally it'll just lead you down a bad path. But you put out good, it equally comes. And I guess that's, yeah, with that, it's just like, it's one of those things which is so clear, but it's like, yeah, you don't actually realize it until like, oh, one day. And unfortunately, some people don't realize it, you know?
And I mean, there are some people who scam artists, and some of these people that you don't see the consequences of their actions. You see them scamming people and making money. But like, there was a book that the daughter of one of the greatest counterfeiters in the world, who was caught. She writes about his life and her experience. At the end of his life, he's broke. He has no relationships. He was always hiding out from the police, and at some points he had a lot of money and he'd spend it, but ultimately inside his spirit, his life was very empty. And I think that's what we part of my whole journey has been. Material wealth, material things are temporal. It is the things of the spirit, the things within us, the essence of us, love and beauty, and those things that really blossom in our life. And so that's why I've been on the spiritual journey for myself. And I think there are many people who are on that spiritual journey. Maybe they grew up in a religious family, or maybe they didn't have any religious, and maybe they're even agnostic, and that's okay, because they're saying, I don't know what's out there. And I'll say, I don't know what's out there either. None of us know, but we're on the journey. And part of that, as you have been, and we talked about this, as you meet people, you're learning, you're expanding yourself.
Indeed.
That's how you grow, right?
Very true. With regards to yourself, has that always been with you, or is it something you had to discover yourself?
Well, even from an early age, I grew up in a very legalistic church where the minister was telling, you're going to go to hell if you don't follow us. I mean, even my friends who were Catholic and Baptist, we're going to go to hell. And I never bought it. I didn't know how to talk about God in that term, but I experienced the love of God as I went to a church camp and was with people of different races than me. So I left God altogether. I mean, I didn't understand it, but I left church and I went into the entertainment business in my 20s. And, part of it was, I think some of us who've had bad experiences with church or with religion, we don't realize that there are many other alternatives. For me, it was, well, every church must be like that church, or every religion. Well, it wasn't until I got older, and then I started asking questions and meeting people. And when I was in the entertainment business out in LA, I mean, I sang on the Johnny Carson show, which was before the David Letterman show. Okay, I mean, I performed, and it was good. I was performing a lot. I was doing a lot, but inside I was very empty. Inside, my soul was empty. I mean, we'd go out drinking and partying and doing all this stuff, after the show. And honestly, I could see that if I stayed in that lifestyle, I would be dead in probably 5 years, right? I mean, and so I got out of the entertainment business because it just was very empty inside. And that's when I began my own reconnection kind of with God and my seeking.
Okay, I see. Johnny Carson, impressive, very impressive. Like, hey, people are going, Johnny Carson? No, no,
They don't know, but
yeah,
maybe they know, Colbert or
no,
the Jimmy Kimmel. It's like one of those late night shows.
no, no. Carson was the sort of standard bearer. He laid the foundations for it all.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, no, like this is the thing. I would say it's very interesting because, like, like when people are sort of trying to find their sort of like direction, there are many a times I would say people just how can I put it? They don't actually sort of go into that place of discomfort where they might have to sort of ask themselves questions where it'll be like, hey, I'm not 100% comfortable asking that question of myself. Now, yeah, you question where it's like, okay, what does faith mean to me? What does God mean to me? And like it's like one of those things which it's not an easy question to sort of like go, yes, this is what God is. It's that simple. It's like for many a scholar, many a person has sat down and went, who is God? What do they do? Why has God done this? And they ask these questions and it takes them to a place of discomfort. But with yourself, you went, yeah, you went to that question, and there'll be other people who would not just be like, yeah, okay, never really truly finding their way, which,
Well, and I think that's true. I think for some people, change is scary.
mm,
The challenge is, can I hold on to the beliefs that I have and also open to a new idea? And it's kind of like when I got married. I've been married 37 years. And so part of what I've realized when we first got married, I kind of had this attitude of, I know what's right. And I love to debate. So I would argue with my wife and I would try to prove my point. And like I'm going to persuade her that I'm right and she's wrong.
mm,
Well, you come to realize, one, that when you think you're right and the other person's wrong, there's no open for conversation and dialogue. The second thing was I came to some humility that there was maybe a point of view other than mine that might even be better or just different.
mm,
So it's the same way with religion. Can I have my belief and also respect somebody else maybe has a different belief than me? Doesn't make mine less or mine right, but I can still respect the other
yeah.
and hold on to my belief. Now that's hard.
Mm. Yeah, but like this is the thing. If you are going to accept a new belief or a new direction, you have to let go of the old direction. Look, you've been married, as you said, 37 years, right? Now, okay. Now, hey, Jerry, if you came in with that same single buck energy, like going, yeah, like, and not sort of let go of that, well, yeah, you would have had a very brief marriage indeed, because
Yes,
yeah,
of course.
yeah. But I think that's another thing what people don't actually take on board. You can't like if you like I found something new and I need to go into a new direction, you've got to let go of the old. You can carry like certain bits of it, but if you're talking about hanging on, you got to like, oh no, I've got to let go and reach for the next thing. If you don't, you will stay stuck in that same place and you won't move forward.
And I think that's why your listeners, clearly, they're listening to you. That means they're already on the journey. They're already asking questions. And that's why I wanted to write this book. And I wanted people to read it. And the people who've read it, it's given them like an aha, like,
Mm,
oh, okay. So it gives them a sense to get connected. And what I found that my understanding of God has changed, right? I used to think of God as a being out there in the universe going to strike me down if I did something wrong, or maybe I would pray to God like Santa Claus, and you would respond to my prayers, and then if not, then I just didn't understand why. Well, my understanding of God is much broader now, as I've seen and as I've read that from other faith traditions and my own readings. God is much more grounded within us
mm,
and around us in all things, that the essence of God, which is in an atom, the essence of the universe is within us. And so it is more about awakening to the divine within, not so much outside, but within. And also, then when I'm when I'm in the woods, when I'm in nature, I connect to that essence that is in all things and within us. And as we come to be in touch with that, which meditation does, a time of reflection, when we come to be in tune and trust ourselves and find that inner peace, that gives us a sense of a wholeness and just a great power and confidence in ourselves.
Mm. Yeah, like sort of tuning into that must be taking a lot of, like, how can I say, self-reflection, like really sort of like finding out who you are, which I would say isn't easy for the most part.
No, I think you're right. And I think especially our society, at least over here in the United States, it's like it's never good enough. You need no beauty products. You need to have better clothes. You need to have this, have that. It's almost like you're inadequate. And then sometimes if you were taught that in your upbringing, that it never was enough. It's amazing. Girls at 12 years old already believe they're inadequate. Their body shape is not good enough. 12 years old, they already are looking at themselves in the mirror and going, oh, I'm too fat. Well, when you are so ingrained to say you're not adequate, you don't believe in yourself, that makes us anxious, worried, driven, fearful. And so to work through those things, to learn about letting go of some of the things of the past, finding some things within ourselves, it takes some work. But I'm more at peace with myself and at one with other people than I've ever been. And it's taken me some years to do that.
Yeah, like what I would say with regards to what you were talking about, yeah, 12-year-old girls not feeling adequate and stuff like that. It is one of those things because we live in a world, and especially these days, like, which is so hyper focused on the things, not the actual, like, it's like, yes, the things like bags, things like cars, like things like the new phone, and like all of the, like, the little things which are meant to improve your life, but as you say, are quite hollow at the end of the day. Because like this is like, if you could sit down and, like, yeah, figure out maybe one or two things about yourself, that might be the key to opening up a whole heap of things and possibilities you never would have seen before. But because the focus is on the external, that's the word I was looking for in my head, the external rather than the inner, and like taking care of that and making that healthy, that's where I think a lot of the world is falling down at this present time.
Well, and that's one of my themes in the book is loving yourself. And in loving yourself, we learned that our thoughts get manifested into our body and into our actions.
Yeah.
Dr. Bruce Lipton has a book called The Biology of Belief. And it's the whole sense that what your thoughts are manifest into your body. That's why a lot of physical illness, our anxiety, our all the things that people can't sleep and they feel restless. They all those things are affected because of what's going on in our brain and our thoughts. I speak about the fact that we've been scientists have said that we have like 40,000 thoughts, 20 to 40,000 thoughts a day, and 80% of them are negative. Because, and when you think about it, just your own life, you think, oh, that's a lot of thoughts. But when you just think your life, you go through the day going, oh, I can't get there. Oh, I got to get this. Oh, what that person did that to me. Oh, I'm, so many times our thoughts are in the realm of negativity. Oh, I just didn't do it well enough.
Yeah.
And so I talk about, and this is one of the things that instrumental in finding inner peace. We have inside of each of us this voice I call the critic. This voice inside of our head, that's the critic. And we listen to that voice more than we do our friend. Now, maybe your friend says, you're really doing a great job.
Yep.
You really are, you got a great personality. You're really all these things. But the critic inside says, if they really knew me, I'm lazy. You're lazy, Jerry. Come on, you can't do that. What are you thinking about writing that book? That was the voice inside of me, what, nobody's going to read this book. You're doing this every day. Just give up. And that critic voice, really, we give more attention to and listen to more than somebody who's our best friend or that we value. And so I talk about how we first need to realize that's only a thought. There's not like we can retrain that thought. We can let go of that thought. Some of that critic voice maybe is our parents, maybe it's somebody from society, but it's just a thought. And so don't let that stay rent free in your mind. You can learn how to, when those negative thoughts come in, let them just go. And so when I would have those thoughts in my mind, like, oh, you can't do this, Jerry, I just go, come on, forget that. I don't even want to let that stay within me. And then I would focus on some of the things. Okay, but Jerry, you wrote another book. Jerry, you can do this if you take one step. That you've done things before if you don't give up. And then you can have different thoughts that come into your mind, and it's retraining of the mind. Now that's an interesting idea that I think a lot of people aren't aware of, that our thoughts get manifested and create our future.
Yeah, no, this is the thing, the power of the mind, and like it is remarkable. Like the amount of times people have taken placebos for like a drug and stuff like this, and they've they've been cured just because their mind goes, I was taking this drug and it's been either a sugar pill or sugar water, and it's just like they're fine. But like with regards to sort of like the many sort of negative thoughts what flow around in people's heads on a sort of daily basis, it is like it's always the weirdest thing to me when I see it. And like and I've experienced it myself, and I'm like going, what doesn't, and it shouldn't make sense, but in this realm it kind of does, because you can give out 99 compliments of positivity, but you remember the one. But if you reverse that and you did 99 like comments of negativity and you just get like one compliment, you will never see that one compliment. You remember the 99. And I don't understand how that works and why that works like that.
I think it's some of our conditioning. I grew up with a thinking of other people more than yourself. Don't think about yourself, because if you think about yourself, you're too prideful. But Jesus said the greatest commandment was to love God with all your heart, love your neighbor as yourself. So a lot of times we forgot about loving ourselves. And that sense of self-care and loving ourselves is something people aren't very comfortable in doing. And so, I grew up feeling inadequate. I had a very strict authoritarian background from growing up, that I felt like I was always not doing enough. My father was driven, so he was always going on, and he'd say, oh, you're lazy, because he was afraid he was lazy. Well, my father ended up having a nervous breakdown at 52 because he could never relax. So I realized later in my 20s ago, I'm not lazy. Although in my early 20s, I was, the only time I could relax was when I got sick. I would get myself physically sick. Then I could finally give myself permission to sleep and relax. So now you start to look at that and go, what are all those things? My anxiousness, my fear, my drivenness, where does that come from? And then you start to realize that was just embedded in me. That doesn't mean it's true just because somebody tells you something. And so, like, I'd be like you. Somebody would give me a compliment and I'd go, oh, thank you, but oh, not really. I mean, someone like, oh, that they don't really know me. They're being nice to me, but they don't really mean it. Inside I'd go, oh, I'm really not good enough. And so they don't really know me. Well, then I started realizing, wait a minute. When they give you a compliment, say thank you. In fact, I take that in. So when I get a note or I get a word of appreciation or somebody, I keep those and I look at those over just to help me savor that. And, because we're so driven to move from thing to thing. And so we accomplish a task. And rather than just moving to the next task, to be able just to savor and say, wow, that was pretty cool.
Mm.
And to let those things come in. When you get done with your podcast, it's not like, oh, I'm going to go on to my next podcast now, I'm going to do this. But to go, now that was a wonderful experience and interchange. I mean, I love having conversations with people because I just can savor and take that in, and it makes me feel so rich if I let it stay embodied and not let it just go.
Yeah. No. No, savoring the moment. And like, this is the thing, like using those compliments, I would say, in not like times of crisis. No, that would be a little bit too more extreme, but like times where you find yourself like going, hey, I need to pick me up. Like I need an anchor point in this sort of stormy, choppy water. Like if you can turn to and find those sort of compliments in from your past, and like, oh yeah, you know what? Yeah, I'm not that. I'm not the worst of what my mind might be churning up. I can't, like, people have said I'm better. People have like indicated I'm better. And like, even if you don't have a written compliment, just like going back in your mind and go, yeah, there was that time that on this date, someone went, yeah, when you look good.
And I think, when you say to somebody, tell me 3 things that you love about yourself.
Ah.
So I'd be interested in, what are 3 things that you love about yourself? What could you tell me 3 things?
I have to dig past a rather dark wall. And like 3 things I like about myself, love about myself.
That you love about yourself. Or like, okay.
Like basically, for the most part, I have a can-do attitude. Like I'm not afraid to start something new, and yeah, don't want to, like, how can I say? I am sometimes not obsessionally driven, but driven to like a high level where, like, yes, if I told you, hey, let's go to the gym together, like, yeah, just maybe you might want to decline. Like, gracefully. It's like, come on, Jay, come to the gym with me. It's like, no, you're like, hey, no, but yeah.
But I think, that's important. The other thing I do, if I get in a funky mood, and we all do that, I get depressed, I wonder, does it make any difference what I'm doing? All that stuff, that in your life. What I'll do is I'll start making a list of things, of blessings in my life. Things that I'm grateful for. When I start listing the things like, wow, I have a wonderful wife, my car's paid off, I don't have any debt. Okay, I only have $1,000 in my savings account, but okay, that's a negative. But I have this and I have that. And then you start listing the things that my life has been blessed with. Now my attitude is changing. I'm now seeing life in a different perspective than I was 20 minutes ago, when I felt like everything was going to hell. And so I encourage people to do that, to write down those things that you feel blessed in and that you're rich in. And, it's funny because somebody said, are you rich now? You're retired. And I said, well, yes, I'm a millionaire. And they go, you have $1 million? And I said, no, I only have 1,000 in my savings account, but I have 1 million in blessings. My life has been so blessed because of people, of the travel experiences, of places I've gone. I mean, if I die tomorrow, I tell people, I'm happy, right? Don't be sad, because it's been a wonderful life.
Yeah, like Les Brown, that motivational speaker,
Yes.
one of the things he says, yeah, I'm like most probably paraphrase, can't say exactly. Basically, on his deathbed, he's got the dreams who are looking at him with its angry eyes, going, yeah, we came to you because only you could bring us to life, and now we've got to die with you because you didn't like follow through. Now, if you can live a life where you can go, okay, you know what? There, like, you can look around your deathbed and go, yeah, it's just your loved ones around you, and go, hey, and go and smile at that fact, and not really have any sort of things you could have brought to this world. You're the only person what could bring to the world because you've given it life and it's out there. Then I would say, yeah, you've definitely lived a rich life, a good life.
And also, but let me say for your listeners, it was hard. I mean, there were times when I thought about just giving up, giving up, quitting. I was going to get divorced. I didn't want to argue. I didn't want to negotiate with my wife.
Yeah.
There were some times I went into counseling. I needed some help because I didn't know how to take care of all those demons inside of myself. And I needed somebody to help me. So it wasn't that, oh, it just read a book and you're fine, or you just pray, okay, it's God, it's fine.
Mm.
No, I opened myself, I asked questions, and I sought to get better. And I felt God brought people into my life, and I wanted to grow, but it took work. And so I want people who are searching, people are listening maybe right now, and maybe they're not feeling their life is they're in a dark place, or they're having difficult times. Part of what I want them to know is that they are a child of God, that they are loved and wonderful. They are created in the image of God, and it was good. That was the beginning of Genesis. And that we are created and we are loved. Our mothers love us, and we need to see from our eyes of our mother who loves us, right?
Mm.
And now not all of us have the best mother or father, so I don't want to do a whole thing for that. But somebody who loves you, and that you love yourself in the same way. Um, there's a wonderful poem that I have in my book. It's from Kabir, who is a writer from the Muslim tradition, and but it says, seeing through the eyes of God. And the poem in the book talks about seeing ourselves through God's eyes. And so I want people who are listening to be able to be on that journey, but finding some ways of first starting to care for themselves, and listening to that inner voice and listening to others.
Mm. Yeah, like this is the thing. I would say, loving oneself, like basically inner growth, like learning and growing. I think when someone is willing to open themselves to learn, that's when they can grow. And yeah, as you say, yeah, it was hard. Of course, it's hard. Like lessons, like the long, like the true lessons, the hard lessons in life never come easy. And like if you have an easy lesson, it is soon forgotten. When you've entered a place where like this was one of the most uncomfortable places in my life. Like I had to really look at who I was to see if I could like basically hold on, one, to the woman I love, like two, like take us, like see where it could take us to that next level. But if you weren't prepared to learn, if you weren't open yourself up to grow, it would not have it would be a lot different for you in life. And I would say a lot of people need to go, okay, I need to learn and I need to grow to get an optimum life,
And I think that's why having a faith or being open to something beyond ourselves,
Mm.
and it is part of that expanding of ourselves. That's, reading these scriptures from the different faith traditions and these great teachers from thousands of years. Even if you don't believe in God, I say you can read the book because it has good principles and values. Somebody said to me, you've been a minister, Jerry, but what if you find out there's no heaven? Well, I go, I wouldn't have changed my life, because really it's not about the hereafter. Even Jesus was saying the kingdom of God is at hand. It's within your midst.
Mm.
I believe Jesus was much more about our wanting to know the abundant life on earth. For many Christians, they were like, oh, you got to get saved to go to heaven.
Mm.
Like heaven's the ultimate thing we want to get to. When in reality, I would suggest that all of the great teachers, all of the great religions speak about how do we experience a glimpse of heaven on earth? How do we help make heaven come into greater reality? And that's part of being a peacemaker, building some healing, reconciliation. And right now, when our world is so divided and people are so separate and there's so much anger, and, I tell people, one, you have to watch what you let come into your mind. I mean, I only watch a little bit of news in the morning for about a half hour. And then I read some things, but when it's video, when it's visual, it can really hit you more than reading. And if you're watching on Facebook or you're on all these visual things, it can mess up with your mind. So I tell people, watch what you're putting into your mind, watch what you're having come in. And then the second thing is, that as you are trying to get yourself centered and growing in yourself, if you're open to that,
Yeah.
to that mystery of life, none of us know if God or what God is, or if God is our own creation. I'm willing to entertain with people who are atheists or people who are very convicted in their own beliefs, to say we can find common ground. Let us find those things that are at the source of our heart and that can bring unity to our world.
Mm. Interesting. Yeah. No, like this is the thing with a lot of, it must have been kind of hard because look, when you go religion now, that is the North Star for many a person. And when you're going between a number of different religions, it's like, okay, it can kind of be kind of like standing on the magnetic North Pole. Like your north is everywhere around you, but it's like, okay, but can I still see my North Star to keep me guided at that time?
And I think, sometimes people will say, well, religion has been used in some bad ways. And
Uh-huh.
and I'll say to people, don't blame God because of how people in our own
People.
immaturity or sinfulness have used. Uh, and religion, in it can be used, but those people, when they use religion to perpetuate their own point of view,
Mm.
or to try to become better than others, really are not being true to the grounding of their faith. When religion in its best, if we all the essence of all of the great religions is about compassion, forgiveness, and love and caring. So I'll give you a good example. This just happened in our city here. There was a synagogue, and this 18 and 19-year-old who had swastikas, and they had Confederate flags, and they went under the and spray painted swastikas all over the synagogue, trying to put fear into them that, we're white and we're Christian and we're the best, or whatever, and you're nothing. Well, what it did was, that was on a Thursday night. By Monday, because we spread through social media and we spread the word, we're having a service of solidarity. The synagogue only had 350, could only seat 350 people in the synagogue.
Mm.
Over almost 1,000 people showed up. And there were people in the parking lot and people with their children who said, we want to come in solidarity. We're not Jewish. There were people of many faiths or people who were agnostic who said, but we want to stand to say love overcomes hatred.
Mm.
And actually, that they caught, because they had video cameras, they caught the two individuals. The guy was 19 years old. So he was prosecuted for a hate crime, went to federal prison for 5 years. His life is ruined. And I really wanted to go to the federal prison and ask him and say, do you really, now that you see all the goodness and all the ripple effects of good things that have come from that and what this has done to your life, do you think you would have still done that? Now, maybe he was a hard-hearted, crusty old person, but my hunch is at 19, maybe he just did a stupid thing. Maybe he just did something that he regretted. And I would love to say, I forgive you. And I want you to know that, find goodness in your life. And I've seen lives change like that. I've seen people who've been in KKK who've encountered a Black person and their lives have been changed. I've seen people who've been divided. I mean, look at Ireland and look at the Catholic and Protestants over in Ireland. Finally, there was some peace after years of war. It can happen if we can do that in our own communities.
It can happen, yes. And like, this is the thing. I think one of the things which sometimes frustrates me about the world in general, like especially the developed world and stuff like this, there doesn't seem to be either there's a lack of investment within some of the hardest communities out there, or there is a lack of faith in like some of the hardest hit communities out there. I'm talking like from inner cities to like rural mining towns, like, yeah, here in the UK, over in the States and stuff like this. But with that sort of like lack of investment, that lack of faith, it then abandons like generations and generations of kids into like a dark places where, yeah, they spray paint a mosque. Yeah, they join a gang. Yeah, they like go up, like they go down pathways which will lead them to no sort of good. Like, yeah, don't get me wrong. There are some who like escape that, but they are the exception to a rather sad rule,
I think there are, we can see the very negative are very greedy in individuals in the world. And that's always been there. I guess I want to get a little step back in world perspective to say, we've come a long way.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I can remember when in our country, when women didn't have a voice, when a Black and white person couldn't marry, when gay people didn't have rights. And so we've made some really big strides. Now we have a long way to go. But I feel that the younger generation, the millennials and those who are going, I don't just want to make money. I want my life to have some meaning to it. I want to make a difference in the world. So we're seeing people who are creating businesses where there's a part of an endeavor, a charity or something that's going to something else. And I think that there is actually, we're in the beginning stages of seeing a greater sense of global community. Some of the things that's happened in the pandemic, it brought us into this world of technology. I mean, I never knew Zoom. I didn't know anything about podcasts. And here we are, I'm talking with you in London and I'm in the States. I've been with people talking around the world. And the more that we can do this, the more that we can choose to say we will take a stand as a peacemaker. I'm not saying it's all going to become all, in our generation, but I think we can make a difference. And that ripple effect will have a greater impact. And I see wonderful things happening in our world.
Yeah, this is the thing. I would say with regards to a number of people like, I want to change the world, and look, I'll go, yeah, you know what? Okay, you want to change the world? get focused with it, concentrate on like one or two key things, and like, yeah, bring that change. But don't just say it generically. Have a plan and execute that plan, because we can say, but like doing is a trickier thing, you know?
Well, yeah, and I mean, to change the world, I begin with me. I have to change myself.
Mm.
The better I can become as a human being, and the better I am in relationship to other people, is the best thing I can do.
Yeah. And like, this is the thing. And I love when you say that, because yeah, you've got a clear, level-headed like approach to it all. And look, with that, it means, yeah, you've like actually thought about what makes you tick, what makes you function, and how you can basically help fit into the greater community. Because like, okay, if I spoke to 20-year-old you and went, hey, you know what, you're going to be running like a series of marathons, like, yeah, like be part of an interfaith like ministry, and then yeah, write 2 books. You might go, excuse me, who are you? It's like,
Right.
it's like, are you crazy? It's like, yeah, but that was you at 20, you know?
Well, and I think that's why, when I wrote this book, the idea is that you could take just one day. If you take for 40 days, it's set up for 40 days, read one devotion, one reflection a day.
Mm,
It takes 15 minutes, but just, and to see how that kind of helps you and grows in you. And like I do it, my wife and I, we even I wrote the book, I still, now we do it together. We read one day reflection, and it's a one, and then we talk about it. And it's a wonderful way for us to have some conversation together about our own kind of insights, our own thoughts and beliefs. And I think that's what I'm hoping is, I have some people who they'll buy the book because they're friend of me, and they never even read it. It's like, okay, I just bought it, but you know, because here's the thing is, you've got to want to grow.
mm,
You've got to want to expand your mind, and not everybody's going to do that. And there's some people who are they don't want change. They're very happy with things they're comfortable, even though they're maybe not unhappy. They're unhappy. I mean, they don't want to, open up so much. But my hunch is your listeners, because they're listening to you and the people you have, they're part of that folks who I believe it's a ripple effect. And that all we can do is our part, but I've seen wonderful things that I've been blessed with, and the ripple effects that have happened from my life that I could never imagined.
mm.
And so, that's all we can do, right?
Yeah, no, indeed, indeed. And I think like with regards to the sort of daily, like 40 like day devotions, everything like that, I think when I would say if you could do that with someone, it most probably it'll have more weight to it, rather than sort of just doing it yourself, because you can sort of like, oh yeah, get deep in the like the weeds of it, get in the thick of it, and like, yeah, sort of like you never know what sort of can like, how can I say, spark out of that sort of conversation, you know?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I think the whole thing with today,
Mm,
and the reason why we have the division so much is because people aren't listening and listening to one another. We're having that conversation, and we could talk about very difficult issues. And when we can listen, when you feel heard, that's the best gift you can give to somebody.
mm,
When I one of the stories I tell is about this grandfather who said to his family, he said, "I'm going to go for a walk. I'll be back in 20 minutes." And he comes home in 2 hours, and they said, "Well, what happened?" He said, "Oh, well, I was there with a neighbor, and he was so good at listening to me, I let the time get away." I mean, he had this friend who just listened. Most people, when you ask them something, they'll tell you all about themselves, but they don't really ask about you.
mm.
And so when you can ask somebody and learn about them, that's sometimes the best gift you can give, is for somebody to feel like, they're heard. Somebody finally understands me.
Mm.
That's a gift.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, no, very true. Very true. Because when we were talking before the podcast started, you asked me about why I started this podcast. And like, yeah, like and I told you, yes, it was about, yeah, helping me learn and grow and keep going forward. Because look, one of the things that no one actually tells you, and like, yeah, I apologize to the listeners who hear this again, but when you're in your teens, you go, yeah, we are Legion, and like the whole bunch go, oh, just like, yeah, off we go. Your 20s, we are Legion, oh, off we go. In your 30s, we are Legion. Oh, where's everybody? It's like the drop off comes quite harsh and fast. And like when you're in your 40s, like myself, it's like, we are Legion. Well, no, we're not actually. We're just this crack group of individuals which come together. Like, yeah, like about 12 of us, and off we go. And when I say 12, that's me being incredibly generous. Most times it's much more than that. But as each decade goes on from like that point, your opportunity for conversations, new, fresh conversations for you to learn, grow, expand your mind, like dwindles away into like nothingness eventually. So this is when someone goes, "Oh, that person's set in their ways." It's a case of, yeah, they are, because if they're a plant, you've shut them off from water for a long time, so they can't actually like take in anything new right now. So it's going to take a whole heap of water to like help them sort of get out of that mindset, to like have these conversations, to grow, to like listen. It's like it's just, yeah, you got to keep on talking. You got to keep on listening to as many new people as possible, because yeah, without it, it'll be a long road, a very long road.
I think that's why, and I was so fascinated when I started exploring the theme of listening and in the scriptures and other writers, because what I found was, when we talk about peacemaking, or that we want to, we want to bring healing and unity.
Mm,
Um, and most of us, we got our job, we got our kids, we got a lot of stuff that we're dealing with in life. So we can't maybe be out there involved in a lot of things. But I'll say, but when you're at work, or you have somebody who you work with, and when you can give that gift of helping that person feel like somebody finally understands me, and when you listen to them and they feel valued, that's maybe the best gift you can give someone.
mm,
Because I think so much of right now, people are angry because they feel like nobody understands them. They feel like, their ideas are being shut down, and unfortunately we have these extremes on both sides, in all of our countries, and they're shouting so loud that they're not even wanting to hear the other side.
yeah.
They're not even wanting. But like, I had this friend, and this friend who voted, was a liberal, and her sister voted for Trump, and they lived apart. They're grown up now, but they came to visit one another, and this friend, uh, she just couldn't believe that her sister voted for Trump. And I said, well, what did you do? She said, I just listened. I wanted to understand. And her friend had these ideas of conspiracy theory, some of these things that, I'd go, you're crazy. What are you talking about? But she didn't do that. She listened for 2 hours to her friend. And by the end of it, her sister finally, I softened some. And I said, that might have been the best gift you gave to her. And I really do think that when I have friends who were Trump and that I helped understand, and I'd say to them, I know you're not a racist. I know, because I know you. Help me understand why you voted for Trump.
Mm,
Well, in their mind, they had certain reasons. Now, they might not have voted a second time, but there was more than just what everybody was blanketed, as if you're a Trumper, you're this, or if you're a liberal, you're this. And when we do that, when we make canvas sweeping statements on, it's not fair to people, right?
Yeah, no, like this is the thing. Like when it comes down to sort of politics, look, like if you look at either party, there are going to be good bits and bad bits out of like both parties, which you like, oh yeah, you look at it and go, that policy is absolutely crazy. That policy makes no sense. Oh, that's a good policy there. It might be on the other party. You got to be able to like go, okay, let's see what this like person who's here to represent us, what they are truly about, rather than sort of like go, okay, oh yeah, I'm team Democrat, I'm team Republican. It's a case of, remember, like, you got your team USA first and foremost, and like these people are just there to represent you. They are the people what need your support for them to be in power. So if they are not providing the best sort of like thoughts or representation for the whole, then kick them to the curb. You're like, oh, but we got a two-party system. No, like kick them to the curb a number of times and they'll be like, yes, they'll start to listen to what the people want. And with regards to if someone's on like red or blue or however they want to like affiliate themselves party-wise, if they did say sit down and listen and go, yeah, why did like I've known you for all my life, why did you go with this rather orange bigoted man? You're like, oh, like, because it might be a case of, no, I agree with him, and they might go down the conspiracy theorist part, and it might be a case of, no, like his policies would like be able to like enact that policy, this policy, which would lead to jobs in this area.
And and I I mean, I'm sorry, and I think it's whether it's politics or religion,
Mm,
part of it, we are tribal people. We want to belong to a group, and that's okay. I mean, we need to have community. We need to have our identity.
yeah.
But when it gets to be closed off, when we get to be like our nationalists, like, oh, the United States, we're the best, we're better than anybody else. Well, that's very arrogant and not very humble. And it's one of the things I didn't like. A lot of people in the US always are, promoting that. And I'd say to them, if you travel around the world, you realize there's some great people and great other things in the world and the people. And I think though, no matter what country we live in or what culture or religion, we have a tendency to want to belong to a group, and that's okay. It's when it stops you from respecting and being open to saying, I can learn something more, and I can see value in the other human being.
Mm.
And rather than putting as a group, but taking each individual and relating to them as an individual. And that's what I hope. And I think the more we do that, the better we can have at breaking down those walls. I talk about turning those walls into bridges, and we can do that.
But like this, like I'm a strong believer. We have a bag of infinite bricks, which we carry with us all the time. Yeah, we can either build a wall or build a bridge, to like keep people out or like go to people. And I hope with yourself that yes, we are building more bridges. We are opening those like realms of communication with each other to like help us move forward to this next thing. Because look, we have had we've had a rather hard 18 months of it globally, and let's just say we are close to getting out of it, but we are still in the thick of it. And I don't know if it's going to be resolved by the end of this year or early next year. But that should be the sort of cue for people to like go, hey, yeah, we do stand together on like common ground. And yeah, we do suffer when like if we suffered during this all together, we should be able to resolve and fix this all together, you know?
I think so. And I think, one of the themes that I write about and to try to help people explore is about forgiveness.
Mm,
And it's about forgiving ourselves and forgiving others. And that's a very deep spiritual principle. But it's hard, when somebody who's wronged you, somebody who's done something wrong at where you work,
mm,
or a friend, and how to learn to forgive. And it takes some real work and some steps, that I talk about in the book, because I think if we hold on to those wounds and those anger and those bitterness, it just destroys us. And it's hard when you have people who you work with, or people in your life who are difficult people, are people who really rub you the wrong way. How do you deal with those people? And that's what, again, I said so much about finding peace is, first I have to find peace within.
mm,
I've got to find that within myself, so that, a lot of times younger, somebody would say something to me, they would diminish me, they would say something, and I'd be defensive, and what do you mean? And like, you jerk, and I'd be like, well, now, I get to the place where I don't even take things so personally. I now know a lot of that is about that person, but that's because I now know who I am, and I'm secure in myself. When I was insecure, when I didn't really feel very lovable, then when somebody said, "You're crazy, you don't know what you're talking about," I get defensive, almost because, like, maybe they're right, but I'm going to prove them wrong. And so, there's that whole process for ourselves, at least for me it was, of learning, one, about loving and trusting myself, believing in myself, and then realizing when somebody did something wrong to me, learning how to walk in their shoes a little bit,
mm-hmm,
so that maybe that person was going in a bad day. Maybe I did something that set them off, and I didn't mean to. There's some reasons, that they responded that way, and that's part of the process of forgiving. But I think that sense of learning forgiveness for others and forgiving ourselves will be instrumental.
mm, mm. Yeah. So no, I like that. I like that a lot. I'm gonna say that. I like it a lot, Jerry. I like it a lot. Yeah. Like, so with that, like, it's not just books, you're sort of getting your message out there with it. How are you sort of like, how else are you doing that?
Well, I'm speaking, and I'm going to different places. I have I'm working. I have just created this Indiana Multifaith Network. It's a statewide, and we're doing some Zoom events that are open to people. We'll have one in November, so that will be on the themes of the book. And I participated in a peace event that had people from 32 countries. And so, I think we just do our own. But if people want to contact me, my website is jerryzehr.com, and they can contact me through that, and I'll respond back if they have questions, or they have comments. I love to have feedback.
Mm.
And they can get the book on Amazon. So, everything's on Amazon. So there you
Wow,
go.
Amazon, yes, our future taskmaster. What can I say? There's a yes, all hail Amazon, mighty Amazon. Pray to the algorithm. What? No. uh, so, like, with this, how long have you been like speaking for? Would you say?
How long have I been speaking for interfaith causes?
Well, interface causes, like, yeah, basically public speaking. Would you say?
Well, my undergraduate degree was in speech and theater. I mean, and so I worked professionally in theater, and then I went into ministry. So I debated on the debate teams in college, and so it's been something, a part of my life, speaking and being in front of people. Where, they say, what's the number one thing people are afraid of? It's speaking in front of people. So it's been, I like it. I mean, I just like, but I like, I like having conversation, and I've been involved, yeah, for 37 years. That's one of the things that somebody gave me a great piece of advice. They said, find something you're passionate about. Your job is your job. Okay. So like for me, I was a minister in a church, and that was that. And maybe you have your job, but the podcast is your passion, right? And it might be a hobby, it might come into something, but find something you're passionate about, just one thing.
Mm,
Maybe it's about children or underprivileged children, or maybe it's about helping this. But when you put your life towards something else beyond yourself and just beyond your family, that's when I was expanded and enriched. So I encourage your listeners, if maybe their life is kind of blasé, or they're just going along, find something that you have a passion for, something you believe in. You don't have to do 10 things, just find one thing, and then find out how you can get involved with it. And it's a wonderful thing.
mm, mm. So where would you say your passion will be taking you in the narrow, distant future?
Well, I thank you, say, for the narrow, because if you said longer term, I'm really not about the future. I mean, I'm trying to live in this moment, in this day, in this year. I'm preparing some things, and so I really don't have any knowledge of what is next. I'm enjoying this. Um, Maybe there'll be another book. Maybe I don't really know, and it's okay. I love to let it unfold.
Mm,
I love to let just the life unfold. I used to, when I was younger, have goals, and I'd have my list of things I'm going to do today, and I'm going to do this. And I still have my task that I'm going to do today. But, I want to be here 5 years. I want to be here 3 years. And I don't know, that was pretty driven. And I like the idea. I mean, it's always good to strive for more in my life, but I missed out on a lot of things, because in my college years it was all about, I got to get out of college to be in the entertainment business,
mm,
and so I never really enjoyed college. In my 20s, that was all, I've got to make this, I've got, I'd be done with this production, I got to do another production. And I never really enjoyed, I was being so driven to accomplish and move up the ladder of success, whatever that was. Somehow the more, the better I was in other people's eyes, I was validated. As you know, in like in business, it's the more money you make, the more successful you are. Well, I don't think that's true. Success in those terms is fleeting. If you live by the numbers, you die by the numbers. So I want to find ways of, later in life, and it didn't come until about 45, 50, I think, really, that I finally was able to let go of a lot of that and just really start to enjoy and let it unfold. So I don't want to pretend like that's how I always was, because I wasn't. I was very driven early on in life. But like I say, my father, when he had a nervous breakdown, he was in sales, he was in insurance, and it was never enough. He'd become the district manager, then he'd become the statewide manager, then he'd become that. And it never was enough.
mm.
And he didn't know how to deal with it.
Yeah. No, I think that's how can I put it? Like I've like one of the things. There's this guy. There's a gentleman called Simon Sinek, and he talks about your why, and basically the finite game and the infinite game. And like, yeah, I won't lie. Like there was large chunk of my life, like where it was like I would think in the finite realm of goals, but like as you like, one of the things you kind of notice as time goes by, in it's everywhere you see. When you see like someone achieve a massive goal, or like someone wants to be a world champion and they hit it. It's like, yes, great. I've achieved what I wanted to achieve. I've made it. I've got to the top of the mountaintop. And like it's great in that moment. And then you see them start to spiral out of control, because that thing, what brought them that focus, that determination, that drive is now gone. And you're like, oh, right. And they're just like, yeah, I've done it. And they just feel empty. So like, yeah, I don't want to fall into that trap. And like, this is the thing. If I can play the game today, play the game tomorrow, play the game for 1,000 days from now, yeah, and 1,000 days after that, and 1,000 days after that, for all time and eternity, I would like that continuous growth, like, yeah, beyond and beyond that. Hey.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. Bob Buford has a book, Moving from Success to Significance. And I think as he in his own life was very successful, but very empty inside, he shifted in his life. And, I think a lot of folks are, maybe they're just, they're living their life. They have a job as an electrician, or they have a job in a retail store or whatever, but you can find meaning in the relationships and how you are with people and in your other people. And that's as significant as somebody who's a CEO of a company. It really isn't about the titles. It's about finding meaning and giving meaning in your life. And I think a lot of that, I would encourage people, is when you open yourself to the divine, that within you and beyond you, that spiritual growth, that emotional growth, that we will find that meaning.
Like it, like no, very good. I like this a lot. And like this is the thing, like with yourself, like, okay, will you be sort of adding any other things to your many bows of like author, speaker, teacher, coach? I know you like were a marathon runner at one point in time. Are you still a marathon runner now?
No. I did my 4 marathons and in my 40s. And I just physically, and I don't have the time to focus. I mean, but running my first marathon, and because I'm not a long distance runner, I ran track, I ran 50 small distances. And I remember I had a friend who was 225 pounds, and he was a bigger guy. And he ran a marathon, and I was like, now, how did you run this marathon? And he said, one step at a time. And I went, oh, yeah. No, he said, no. He said, now, Jerry, I wanted to do something that challenged me, that was beyond what I could believe I could do. Okay. I wanted to do something that really stretched me emotionally and physically. So I said to him, well, I mean, how did you do it? He said, well, Jerry, can you run 3 miles? Well, I mean, I can run 3 miles. I can't do it fast, but I could do 3 miles. So we actually did this where we ran for 4 minutes and walked a minute, and we did 3 miles. Okay. And then, so we started doing 3 miles together, and I do it with him once a week. And then I did on my own a couple of times during the week. And it was kind of nice because we did something, it's so good when you're going to do something to have a partner, an accountability partner, somebody who you can share that with. Because if I was just going to do it myself, I would have given up. I would have, I'm too lazy. But because I had somebody who I'm running with, I knew I didn't want to disappoint him. So when we were going to meet on Saturday, I had to be there.
Yeah.
And we started 3 miles. Now, if I imagined myself running 26 miles, I would have given up. I mean, I couldn't imagine it. It's the same way with writing a book or doing a podcast. When you think about, you started your podcast, you're like, I know nothing about doing a podcast. What do I do? But you did it slowly, little bit by little bit, because you didn't give up. And we started running 3 miles. And then after 3 weeks, we started running 6 miles. And then we started running 9 miles. And then we started doing a long run and short run. It took me 6 months of training But when I ran my first marathon, and it wasn't fast, I ran it in 5 hours and 20 minutes. I mean, the people who run the marathon, they run it in 2.5 hours, right? You know, but, and when I'm running, the funny thing is, as I'm running the marathon in the race, and I was doing, earlier races, I'd have older people who were running ahead of me, and I'd be like, I'm not going to let that older man beat me, and I'd run ahead of him. And then I'd wear out, and then because he was steady on his own pace. And what I realized was I need to run my race, not somebody else's race. And so when people would say, oh, what's your time? Like somehow, if you ran a faster time, you were a better runner. And I said to them, my time wasn't important. I finished the race. That's what was important to me, right? And some people have a hard time because they're always like, oh, well, if you ran a 4, I have people, they train. Well, I ran 5 hour. Now I ran a 4-hour marathon. Oh, I'm getting better. Okay, you're getting better, but that doesn't make you a better person. Your personhood can't be wrapped up in the accomplishments. You as a person is a wonderful person. You're a beautiful person. Our getting to know you, your eyes, your energy of who you are. I love being around you. If I was in London, right? Because you have such a great spirit about you, right? Now that has nothing to do with what you do,
Yeah.
and I don't really care. So it's like people think, somebody has a degree. And I don't have a degree. I don't have, I graduated from high school. That doesn't make that person a better person because they have a degree. You as a person are who you are. They have some things that they do better, and you have some things you do better.
Yeah. No, but like this is the thing. Sometimes when people get caught up with those sort of titles and like monikers, look, okay, if you're running for time, great. You run for time. That is your personal sort of validation. But if you're like there, I want to run a marathon. Okay. Like, are you a professional athlete? No. You want to run a marathon? Yeah. Great. Run the marathon. Doesn't matter. Like if it takes you a day and a half to do it, you run it, you completed it, you've achieved that goal. Yeah, there are people what can do it in 2.5 hours. There are people what can do it in 3 hours or 4, 5, whatever. But the important thing is you as an individual wanted to run that marathon. You set your mind to it. You got your running shoes on. You went out there, ran it, completed it. Bravo. And no one takes anything away from you with that. No one.
And if you didn't do it, if you started and you failed, that doesn't define you as a person.
No.
Okay, you didn't accomplish that task. There was a lot of things that I failed at. But what I've realized, and if anything out of this conversation for people who are listening, your value as a person is who you are. Your uniqueness and your personality. It's not in the things you've accomplished or things you've achieved or things you haven't achieved. And who you are is that beautiful creature, person. And for you to celebrate that and cherish that, have fun with it, do some wonderful things, experience life, but realize that you are who you are. That doesn't define you.
Now, I would say if anyone, like if they went up for a challenge like that and they did fail, you like, yeah, you've done so much more than so many other people in this world, because like you were prepared to sort of like get into that realm of discomfort and see what type of person you are,
And I mean, the thing is, you will fail. I failed at a lot of things. I don't even like the word failure because really the word failure is in our vocabulary. I don't think it's in God's vocabulary, because when I did something, I learned from it. I grew from it, right? So I wrote a play. I never got it published. Nobody ever did anything from it. I mean, I have this play in my filing cabinet 30 years ago. But I did something. I grew from it. It was a great experience, and it's okay. So the word failure is not even a good word. I think it shouldn't. I don't really embrace that word, because I tried things, maybe they didn't go the way I hoped for, but I learned something, I grew from it. I like that. I'm not sure, but it needs to be a different word than failure.
Well, like basically, like I would say you learned from it, because like every time like you fail, there is a lesson which is learned. I would say even like greater than when you have been victorious. Like when you have the victor's story, yeah, the sort of lessons which are in that story are seldomly picked up when the loss is there, because it has this sort, it's shrouded in that sort of realm of pain. You actually sit down and think about it. You mull it over a little, and not like, if you're healthy about it, you're like, oh, okay, that's where the lesson lives. I've done that. Let's get back after it. And yeah, you keep doing that, victory, like triumph, will come your way. But if you dwell in it, then yeah, you're doomed to repeat it because you've missed the lesson.
Very good.
Hey, what can I say? I have my good moments here and there. Now, I have to ask. Now, if you had the ability to meet anyone like you would love to have a conversation with, like through time, space, like fictional, non-fictional, who would that conversation be with?
Oh, wow. There are three people who I come to. Oh, wow. Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., Buddha, and Jesus.
Wow. Some, like, all the heavy hitters right there. Some ultra hitters there. Like, what would you ask? What would be one of the questions you would ask?
Oh, ah, um, what have we misunderstood, or what was it that we have not grasped that you wanted us to understand? Like, one of the things I think of Jesus is going to say, he had no decision. He wasn't intent on creating a whole new religion of Christianity. That was Paul, and afterwards, Jesus was trying to have people reform and following their way, making a connection with God. But I'd be interested in yeah, what was it that people have maybe misconstrued
Hmm,
about you?
interesting. Very interesting. Hmm. What they've misconstrued. Right? Ah, if I had to do it, who would I talk to?
Who would you talk to?
Now that is the thing. Hmm. Who would I talk to? You know what? Like, I would like to talk to Maya Angelou. Like, just sort of like,
Ah,
yeah, basically, like, just talking to her, like, yeah, just saying like how life was to this point now, what sort of like hopes and dreams it was she was expecting it, and like what wonders she's seen, because that is a lady who's lived a rich life, a very diverse life, with like her sort of choices of experiences, you know.
yes, yes,
Yeah. Mm,
that'd be great.
yeah. Now, Jerry, it's been a pleasure speaking to you today. Pleasure. But like, yeah, can you tell the lovely people how they can actually find you, get you on those interwebs? I know you mentioned it earlier, but mention it now so it's all focused.
Yeah, jerryzehr.com, JERRYZEHR.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn and Goodreads, but on Instagram, Twitter. And then the book is on my website or on Amazon. The
Excellent.
piece,
Yep.
yeah, I was going to say The Peacemaker's Path, Multifaith Reflections to Deepen Your Spirituality.
Perfect. Perfect. Yes. I'll also put all of his details into the show notes, into the description, so you can find him wherever you are. Jerry, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast today. Superstar. Bellissimo. Yes. Most kind. Yeah.
And I close with saying namaste. Namaste in the Hindu and Buddhist tradition is, I bow to the divine within you. And then as the person says namaste back, they bow within the divine within you. And that's a bow. So anyhow, I namaste to you and to all of your listeners.
Perfect. Brilliant. And I'd like to say thank you to you, my friends, my life warriors who have stuck with us to this point in the podcast. Thank you very much. Please stay safe, stay well, be awesome, be excellent, be all the bees you can possibly be. And yeah, have a great day, my friends. Yeah. Peace. And we are